Everyone, welcome or welcome back to my channel, Diana and the Book Hunt. As Christmas is approaching, we only need to sleep about 30 nights to get up to Christmas. Can you believe it? I'm just so excited for this holiday season. Yeah, so we need to only sleep 30 nights to get up to Christmas. I think it's the best time to kind of start wrapping up the reading year that I've had. I'm going to be posting a couple of videos here and there, sharing with you some surprises, disappointments, some favorites and least favorites, and generally just wrapping up all of the books that I've finished this year. Up to now, I've finished about 180 books. Obviously, I'm not going to be talking about all of them, just ones that kind of stuck with me. And today is a video that I'm going to be focusing on all of the duologies that I've finished. I've kind of split up the series and the duologies because if I do it in one go, it's going to be a long ass video. So I'm going to only focus on duologies today. There are not very many of them, but some of them were really good. So stick around to find out which ones they were. I'm going to do it chronologically because that is how my brain works best for some reason. So I'm going to start off with the ones that I read at the beginning of the year and end with the one that I just finished in September because that's the last duology that I finished. So yeah, let's just go ahead and take a look which ones they are. The first one is one that I had put off for a couple of years, and I really wanted to read it because it sounded super intriguing. It's the Raidbearer series by Jordan Ifueko. This is a young adult fantasy series that focuses on a Western African cultural aspect and a very intriguing plot. It has a very intriguing magical system, but it also has, like I mentioned, very interesting cultural elements that really kept me fascinated throughout the whole book. It's actually two books that follow the same character, so you do need to read both of them and you need to read them in order. And basically what is also fascinating is that there is amazing representation within the book, and I listened to the audiobooks for those two books and they were just excellent because there were also songs interwoven with the narrative, and just it was just amazingly done. It kept you engaged the whole way. It was kind of like a production that you're listening to, so I definitely appreciated that. Within the story, we follow Tarisai, who is a young girl, and she is basically chosen to be one of the Crown Prince's main 11 council members who need to get chosen only if they fall in love with the Crown Prince. So they need to have a genuine love for the Crown Prince, otherwise they wouldn't be able to join this council, and there are specific ways in how they can prove that. So she is chosen for one of the Crown Prince's 11, and the intriguing part within the plot is that she has been tasked with killing the one she loves by a character I'm not going to spoil for you. And this is where the intriguing part in the plot starts to develop, because obviously we first follow this trial of her trying to get into the council, and then once she gets into the council, what happens then, because she needs to kill the person she has fallen in love with. And that is something that fascinated me when I heard about this book in the first place. That's why I wanted to pick it up. And I'm not going to spoil anything else about the plot for you, so you can hopefully be intrigued enough to pick these books up too, because they were absolutely fascinating. I definitely recommend them. They were 4 to 4.5 star reads for me, and I definitely need to keep track of what Jordan Ifueko writes because I definitely want to pick up more by this author. The next duology is one of the surprising reads that I had this year, one that is going to end up in my favorites of the duologies that I've read for this year. And I have to say that I did read the first one. I finished it. The second one I've started, but I've yet to finish it, and I'm going to finish it by the end of the year. I really hope so, because I'm very intrigued with what happens within the second book, because we're following the same characters. So here is the point where I need to tell you that you need to read them in order. The book is by Manuela Ruge, and the first one is called Ariel. The second one is called Stellar. We're following a French girl or woman, she's a woman, a French woman who is a circus performer, and she wants to go over to Canada, to Montreal, where she wants to join this program for circus performers, where if she completes the program she can get picked up by a circus production that is equal to like Cirque du Soleil. So she is very ambitious. She wants to succeed in her mission of joining this company, and this program is very grueling. So she moves over there, but I have to mention that she has a boyfriend back in France. When she moves over to Montreal, she ends up in a situation where she's a roommate of two other guys. So the romance is between herself, the two guys that she's roommates with, and her boyfriend. Now, I have to mention here that this year really was the year of why I choose romances for me, because prior to this year I had only read one, if I'm not mistaken, and I don't know whether it was that book specifically or whether it was me, but I didn't vibe with it too well, so I was not sure whether this subgenre was the subgenre for me. So I decided this year to just try it out, because so many people were talking about how wonderful some of these Why Choose stories were that I've also picked up this year, and I have come to find out that I actually really do enjoy these stories. Especially this one was a very surprising read for me. This one is very special because I have to say that in some Why Choose stories we have the heroine who is in a relationship with a couple of guys, and basically the guys are there to be with her. They don't want to have any kind of relationship with the other guys. They're kind of like friends or whatever, but they're not really involved with each other. In this story, we really have a polyamorous story where they all genuinely fall in love with each other. So it's not really the woman that is the only focal point within the story, but we focus on each and every one of the four characters, and I really did appreciate that. It's just such a special story because the author has managed to bring focus on the polyamorous relationship, also on Fauve's ambition to become this circus performer, and to how grueling this world is and how difficult it is to be the best of the best within that specific career path, and also how beautiful circus life is. She also manages to focus on each and every one of the characters and what their special traits are, so you really know who is who and who contributes what to the relationship. So I really appreciated this one. I know that it's not like not many people have read this book, but I've kind of made it my mission this year to talk about it as much as I can, so many people can pick it up if you haven't yet. So if you haven't, please pick it up and let me know if you're surprised as I am by this wonderful duology. The next duology that I picked up is probably the highest rated duology that I have on this list, and I definitely did enjoy both of the books. Technically speaking, the first book I had actually read quite a few years ago, and then I decided to reread it because I wanted to pick up the second book back to back. The books are by Devney Perry. The first one is called The Birthday List. The second one is called Letters to Molly. And they can definitely be read as standalones because they're not following the same couple, but I do recommend that you pick up The Birthday List first and then Letters to Molly if you want to read them back to back, because yeah, within the first book we kind of get hints of what will happen in the second book, or at least we know that the couple that is going to be the focal point of the second book. In the first book, we're following our main heroine who unfortunately loses her husband. And her husband, before he passed away, he was keeping track of a very silly, like a birthday list, where for each birthday he wanted to do something that he never did, like I don't know, going to a karate class, or doing something outrageous or whatever, just a birthday list with specific activities that he wanted to complete for each of his birthdays. And what she decided to do is, within a year time, she wanted to complete all of those activities to kind of honor him, but also to kind of gain closure after what has happened so that she can try to move on. And during one of those activities, she meets a guy that actually has a very key role within what happened with her husband, like not a murder plot type of thing, but he's the police officer who came to her house to let her know that her husband passed away. So he kind of saw her at her lowest point, but then he also started to see her in how she's trying to pick herself up, and their story is just so beautiful. Obviously, there is a lot of emotional scenes within this book. It is an emotional book, but it's also a very beautiful book, because if you think about how she's trying to get over her grief, or how she's trying to process her grief, it's a beautiful thing that she does. And then also focus on the guy who really wants to help her through what she's dealing with, and is really appreciative of how strong she is for what she's trying to accomplish with the birthday list, and he's helping her through that birthday list. It's just such a beautiful, wholesome story, an emotional story as well. I gave that one 5 stars already when I read it back in, I don't know, was it 2018 or something? And then I gave it 5 stars again this year. In the second book within the duology, Letters to Molly, we follow Molly, who is the heroine from the first book's best friend, and Finn, who is the brother of the heroine in the first book. Those two, Molly and Finn, they were married, but they got divorced because we find out at the beginning of the book already that Molly has cheated on him. Now, obviously they're divorced, but they have kids, so they are in each other's lives and they're trying to be civil to each other. But we really quickly find out that Molly is actually still having feelings for Finn. She's not over the whole situation. She is very regretful, remorseful for what she has done and how she has kind of ruined their relationship. But the interesting thing about how the plot progresses is that Molly starts to get letters that were written by Finn while they were still married, and she's kind of trying to figure out who is sending them. Is this kind of a message that they need to try to give it another go? Is Finn up to that? And it's just a wonderful second chance story that felt very real to me. I don't know what it is, but whenever we're following couples who have been together for a very long time, it kind of hits home for me that they may have some marital problems, or in this situation they have split up because of the situation that occurred. But whenever there are kind of marital problems, or just a situation where you see that they love each other, but for some reason things are really standing in the way of them being in a happy and fulfilled relationship, you see the realness of the situation, right? Where they need to find a way to work through the obstacles that they're in. So it just feels real to me for some reason. I think in the real world, it kind of works like that. All relationships require hard work. It's not all roses and sunshine and just pink glasses on, and it doesn't work that way. So whenever I read such a story, it hits home for me that I find it very relatable for some reason. So yeah, I definitely enjoyed both of the books. Both of the books were 5-star reads for me, and I definitely recommend them with my whole heart to you. If you haven't picked them up yet, please do. The next duology I think I picked up because it sounded fun, because it involves fake dating, and then I found out that it's quite more emotional than what I expected. The first book is called Girl in Love, and the second one is called Boy in Love, and you definitely need to read them back to back, because we're actually in following order, because they're following the same couple. The books are by Jake Crownover and Rebecca Yarros, and I think they sounded fun because in the blurb it said something like the main heroine Langley needs to go to a wedding, the wedding of hell, if you can imagine that. And she's kind of looking for the best suitable partner in crime to join her for that wedding. but it has to be a specific type of guy who is going to drive her family nuts. So that kind of sounded like a fun read to me, but it turned out, like I mentioned, to be quite more emotional than what I expected. But I did definitely enjoy both of the books. I gave them both 4 stars, if I'm not mistaken. So we're following Langley, who is going to have to attend her stepsister's wedding, and her stepsister is marrying Langley's ex. So that's what I mean by the wedding from hell. And because she's in a family they're well off and they have these expectations for the wedding, it needs to be very kind of high end, and very specific people are invited to this wedding. She decides to go to this dive bar where she's going to pick the first possible guy who is like tattooed and looks rough and is not going to fit into the picture perfect scenario that her family is expecting. And she finds that guy in Iker who is kind of in a bit of a difficult family situation. He is, I think he's a Marine, or he's in the army. I don't know what kind of division he's in, but I think he was in the army, and he's on leave at the moment, so he has the opportunity to join her, and she makes him a proposal that he can't refuse, and they join into this kind of a mission to fake date each other for this wedding. But they're definitely both attracted to each other, so very easily they kind of jump into a relationship from that fake dating scenario. So yeah, they're kind of short books. I think they're like 250 pages each, so they're quick reads, and I definitely recommend them because like I mentioned, I was surprised by how emotional they got and how much depth they were trying to look for within the short amount of time that we're following the 2 characters. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, that the first book is really presenting the situation from her perspective, while the second one is presenting the situation from his perspective. So yeah, it's definitely one that I recommend, and if you haven't picked it up, please do, and let me know what you thought about it as well. Next up, I picked up a duet that I am not going to talk about plot-wise, because I think that the best way to go into those 2 books is to go in blind. Otherwise, you may get spoiled, and then it wouldn't be quite as impactful as it should be. The 2 books are by Ashley Jade, and it's the Devil's Playground duet. It's a very weird duology. I have to say that it follows kind of a love triangle. This is the only thing I'm going to say. That is kind of, I don't think it's a spoiler because you already get into it from the start of the book. And then the second thing I can say is that it's a very dark romance involving very toxic people and toxic relationships, and there is a very big chance that you're going to hate one of the guys within the book, and that you're going to want to chuck the book if you're reading the physical copy across the room, because some of the situations are very frustrating. But yeah, it's just a very dark, toxic love triangle duology, and you definitely need to read them back to back because they're following the same characters again. So yeah, I think I gave these books 3 stars each. They weren't favorites of mine, but I have to say that they were kind of addictive. You really, once you get into them, you cannot stop reading because they're very, very interesting in a very twisted way. So I think if you check on Goodreads, many people absolutely love this duet. So it may be a me thing that I just didn't vibe with one of the characters, but otherwise it was just a very wow read. So if you're intrigued by yeah, reading a very dark romance, you can definitely pick up this duology. The last duology I'm going to talk about is one that is actually technically part of a trilogy, but I'm going to include it in this video because the first two books that I read are really focusing on this love triangle between Charlie, who is the woman, Cameron, her husband, and Reese, who is her first love, who came back into her life after a very big absence. And really the first two books are about who Charlie is going to choose. And then the third book is focusing on the person she didn't choose. So really, I think that his book can be read as a standalone, while the first two books really need to be read in order. So we're following Charlie. She has been married to Cameron for I think maybe like 10 years or more, and their marriage has kind of dwindled. It has kind of burned out, and she is really feeling dejected within her life. She is a kindergarten teacher, and what happens is there's a new teacher who comes into her prep school, and that teacher turns out to be her first love, Reese. And they kind of have a forced proximity situation because they're seeing each other at the school every day. They kind of reconnect, and there is cheating involved in this duology, so bear that in mind. If you don't like that, you need to skip. You need to skip these books. But yeah, we're basically following the progression of the relationship between Charlie and Cameron, and also Charlie and Reese, and we kind of are shipping different situations within the books, and in the end, by the end of the second book, we know who she's going to choose. So yeah, it's a very angsty, very messy, very emotional, and very frustrating at times duology, but Candy Steiner writes angst like no one else, basically. I think that she's the queen of angst, if you ask me. So if you enjoy Candy Steiner's other works, you definitely need to pick up this duology. If you haven't read anything by Candy Steiner, I don't know if this is the first place to start. I think she has other books that are definitely more popular, like A Love Letter to Whiskey. But if you want to read a very messy love triangle story, you need to pick up these two books. These were all the duologies that I managed to finish in 2022. I hope you enjoyed this video, and please let me know if you've read any duets that I need to pick up maybe next year. I'm definitely going to be recording all of the series that I managed to finish this year as well, because those are quite more than the duologies that I've finished. So you can look forward to that video on my channel soon. Please subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and I hope to see you very soon in the next one. Have a wonderful, marvelous day. Happy reading. Take care, and bye-bye.